Whenever I'm editing, I always find that one of the hardest things to show on video is an absence. I always struggle with this. Write a bit of narration, then desperately try to find a video clip matching my own words. I could show a black screen, the simplest absence. But for the beautifully mad Canadian filmmaker Guy Maddin, absence might look like this.
Good evening. Thanks very much. My name is... Well, we've got a little song for you. It goes something like this. Dream, the molten dream of justice.
Yeah! Dreams.
Whatever it is you think I have done,
Visions.
I have done it 10 times worse than you even know.
Madness.
Guy Maddin's been working since the mid-'80s, honing a visual style that's... how to phrase this? Retro? He's long nursed an obsession with silent and early sound film, shooting as if from an alternate universe where the silence learned to speak, but stayed, in a way, silent, rewriting film history with a verbose mania. The Forbidden Room is no different, telling story after story, sinking and rising out of each other, like lava. Or like if Cloud Atlas was drunk. I'm good at similes. Here are just some of the stories in The Forbidden Room. Beneath the sea, a submarine is losing oxygen, but can't surface without exploding because of jelly. In northern Germany, an aspiring lumberjack seeks to free his lady love from the clutches of a clan of raiders. There is bladder slapping. On a train from Berlin to Bogota, a woman comes face to face with her inner child. In the Pacific, squid theft, punishable by death. In China, a doctor falls for a patient, then loses her when a band of skeleton women force him to wear a poisoned leotard. In song, Udo Kier gets brain surgery to cure a chronic butt fetish. All of these stories were based on real movies. Guy Maddin and his co-director Evan Johnson spent years researching lost films from the early 20th century, real movies that have been lost to history. And a common thread among them? Amnesia.
You all suffer from an extremely rare form of amnesia, an illness that leaves your memory unaffected, but which nevertheless affects the memories of your friends and families.
We've forgotten something. But what?
Hello, I'm Marv. Today we're going to discuss baths.
Maybe it was nothing important. I mean, human civilization will likely survive without the 1937 film How to Take a Bath.
Carefully insert your big toe in the water.
Yeah, it's a real film. Was a real film.
Hopefully, it'll be just right.
It might be a bigger crime to have lost this film, The Dream Woman, a 1914 movie by Alice Guy Blaché, one of the first women to ever step behind a camera, a crucial part of the history of women's cinema, forgotten by a male-centric industry. But even big-name directors are vulnerable to time, like this film, The Janus Head, directed by none other than F.W. Murnau, director of Nosferatu. It starred Conrad Veidt and Bela Lugosi. Murnau would later make it big with his riff on Dracula. We'll never see just what he did with his riff on Jekyll and Hyde.
Self-mastery at last.
Sometimes all Maddin had to go on was a director and a title, like for this segment. The title? The Strength of a Mustache. The director? Mikio Naruse. The Japanese director was as prolific as his contemporaries, Ozu and Mitsuguchi. But most of his work was lost. Maddin had to make his own weird little story, using nothing but the title and his knowledge of the director's surviving work. But what to do when you've lost an entire genre of film? Movies have long been haunted by this Slavic myth, the vampire. But Madden dedicates a whole chunk of the film to tell this Filipino myth of a jungle bloodsucker who smells faintly of rotten bananas, whose footsteps grow softer the closer he gets. How different would horror film be if we still told legends of the Aswang? It's said that about 80% of movies made in the first 30 years of film history are now lost. I wonder what happens to a movie when it dies. Maybe film, like people, can leave ghosts. The Forbidden Room emerged out of an internet-based piece, which Madden called Seances. He'd liken himself and Johnson to psychic mediums, communing with the spirits of dead films. He shot in public, in Quebec, and in the Pompidou Center in Paris. The resulting footage would then be remixed on a website to create a unique short film from the pieces, to be played once, and only once. The site doesn't allow pausing, rewinding, or sharing. It simply creates, then destroys, a movie. I'll put a link to the website below. Assuming you're watching this on YouTube, of course, with all the metadata still intact. And assuming the website is still being hosted. Madden spent his entire career obsessed with resurrecting the dead. Here's a quick, furious epic, The Heart of the World, an adaptation of a lost film by the French titan Abel Gance. Lost forever. Except here it is. Turns out it wasn't lost at all. Standard definition maybe, but not lost. This is one of my personal favorite films, The Passion of Joan of Arc. Another nearly lost film by Carl Theodor Dreyer. The original negative burned up. He tried to remake it with alternate takes. Dreyer went to his grave, thinking this film had been lost forever. Luckily for the world, here it is. René Jean Falconetti's performance has been immortalized, studied, copied, and homaged. Falconetti's image was allowed to echo. This actress, Theda Bara, wasn't as lucky. Here she is as Cleopatra. This is the only footage that survives. She was nicknamed the Vamp. She was cinema's first sex symbol. The great-grandmother of goth. And yet, we just have this shot. The rest of her work, over 40 films, lost to a vault fire. Losing art is common, unfortunately. We've lost paintings, lost books, lost songs. We've lost a few Shakespeare plays, most of the dramas of Greek theater. With all antiquity, there's an expected element of amnesia. But film? It's barely a century old. How can it be lost? Nitrate film stock, for one. Hard to keep a movie preserved on something that's likely to burst into flames. Bureaucracy, for another. Lack of resources, or lack of interest. And it continues to this day. The rise of home video allowed for the mass distribution of films, but at the cost of quality. So many beautiful images shot for sensitive film, lost to the grunge of magnetic tape. And yes, it's true of YouTube as well. All YouTube video is compressed, not encoded as a series of still images, the way film is preserved, but as the change of pixels from one frame to another. It saves memory, at the expense of quality. It's also why you sometimes see data moshing, that form of digital glitch where one field of image overtakes another with movement. And data moshing is also in this movie. Because, for all of its filmic qualities, Guy Maddin and Evan Johnson shot The Forbidden Room digitally, Then, through a long post-production process, created their own bespoke form of film decay, creating the simulations of faded two-strip Technicolor, of film grain, chemical rot, and yes, data moshing. We've invented a new way to decay. Fitting. The filmmaking world has been undergoing a massive shift over the last few decades, from film to digital. A transition with as much controversy and blowback as the transition from silent to sound. Madden's favorite era. So I wonder, what will we keep in the transition? Remember, data, too, fades. But what will it fade into? Mirrored video? Pirated video? Something as easily posted as it is removed? What about when YouTube itself goes under? And the next platform, and the next, until all that's left are ones and zeros stored who knows where? What will the ghost of streaming video look like? I can only hope today's films, when lost, will create a ghost as wonderful and strange as the Forbidden Room. A gurgling, screaming, hilarious, demented phantasm of forgotten yesterdays. What a tragedy it would be if this film, too, were lost. As all things will, eventually. In that future day, when all that we can show is the absence.
Thank you. You've been a great audience. See you the next time, everybody. Drive carefully. Good night.